My husband tricked me into signing a postnup after I quit my job to raise our kids. Now he wants a divorce and everything is in his name. But I found a loophole that could ruin his plan. When I first met Nathan, he was everything I ever wanted in a partner, charming, successful, and utterly devoted to me. Or so I thought. We met at a networking event when I was still climbing the corporate ladder, and our connection was instant. Within a year we were married, and life seemed like a fairy tale. I had a thriving career, and he was doing well in his own business. Everything was perfect. But then, a few years into our marriage, I got pregnant with our first child. We had talked about having kids, and I was thrilled when it finally happened. Nathan and I agreed that I would take a break from my career to focus on raising our children. He assured me that I didn't need to worry about finances. After all, we were a team, and he'd take care of everything. I loved being a mom, but there were days when I missed the independence my job gave me. Still, I trusted Nathan completely. He would often remind me that everything he did was for our family, and I believed him. Then one evening, about 6 months after our second child was born, Nathan brought up the idea of a postnuptial agreement. He said it was just a precaution, a way to protect our assets and ensure our kids' future in case anything ever happened to us. He insisted it was nothing to worry about, just a smart financial move. I was hesitant at first. Why would we need a postnup? We were happy, weren't we? But Nathan was so convincing, telling me that it was just a formality and that all his friends were doing it. It's just to keep everything clear and organised, he said with that reassuring smile of his. I'll even have my lawyer go over it with you to make sure everything's in order. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe that he had our best interests at heart. So, against my better judgment, I signed the postnup. Looking back, that was the moment everything began to unravel, though I didn't realise it at the time. It wasn't until a few years later that the cracks in our marriage started to show. Nathan became distant, spending more time at work and less time with the kids and me. He always had an excuse, a big project, an important client, a business trip. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. One day, out of nowhere, Nathan sat me down and told me he wanted a divorce. I was blindsided. How could he just throw away everything we had built together? I was in shock, barely able to process what he was saying. Don't worry, I'll make sure you and the kids are taken care of, he said, as if that would make everything okay. But when I started asking questions, it became clear that he had been planning this for a long time. The house, the cars, the savings, everything was in his name. And because of the postnup, I was entitled to almost nothing. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I had given up my career, my financial independence, to raise our children and support Nathan's ambitions. And now he was leaving me with nothing. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do anything but sit there and listen to him calmly explain how this was for the best. But I didn't. I just nodded, trying to keep myself together in front of the man I had once loved so deeply. It wasn't until I was alone that the reality of the situation hit me. I was about to lose everything, the house, the lifestyle, even the security I thought I had. Nathan had played me, and I had fallen right into his trap. If you're still with me, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more updates. Trust me, this story is just getting started. I couldn't let Nathan get away with this. I knew I had to do something, anything, to protect myself and my kids. But I didn't know where to start. I was terrified, feeling like I was drowning in a sea of legal jargon and betrayal. That was when I realised I needed help. I wasn't going to let Nathan ruin my life without a fight. After Nathan dropped the bombshell, I felt like my world was spinning out of control. For days I couldn't sleep or eat. I just kept replaying every moment in my head, wondering how I could have been so blind. How could I have missed the signs? I had trusted him with everything, and now I was left with nothing. In the midst of my panic, I knew I had to act fast. Nathan was already steps ahead, and I couldn't afford to fall further behind, so I did the only thing I could think of. I called a lawyer. The first few consultations were devastating. Each lawyer I spoke to confirmed what I feared. The postnup was airtight. Nathan had been meticulous in his planning, making sure that everything was legally bound to him. I was advised to settle quickly and take whatever Nathan offered, as I had little chance of winning in court. But I wasn't ready to give up. I had to believe there was something I could do. After all, this was my life, my children's future at stake. Then, finally, I found someone who gave me a glimmer of hope. Her name was Claire, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney who specialised in complex divorce cases. When I sat down in her office, she didn't sugarcoat anything. "Your husband's a piece of work," she said, scanning through the documents I brought. "He's been planning this for a while, but let's not lose hope just yet." She spent hours going through every line of the Postnup, explaining each clause to me. Most of it was as bad as I feared, but there was something about Claire's determination that kept me going. She wasn't just looking at the surface, she was digging deep, searching for any mistake Nathan might have made. And then, after what felt like an eternity, she found something. "There's a clause here that's poorly worded," Claire said, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the text. "It's small, but it could be enough to leverage. This section about your contributions to the household, it's vague. If we argue that your work as a stay-at-home mum constitutes a significant contribution, we might be able to challenge the Postnup." My heart raced. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was something. It was a chance. Over the next few weeks, Claire and I worked tirelessly. We gathered evidence, emails, texts, financial records, anything that could support our case. I went through old documents, trying to find anything that could show how much I had sacrificed for our family. The more I dug, the more I realised how much Nathan had taken me for granted. One day, while I was sorting through a stack of papers in the attic, I stumbled upon something I had forgotten about: our original prenuptial agreement. It was from before the kids, back when we were both working and had agreed to keep our finances separate, just in case. I had signed it without much thought, believing it would never really matter. But now, as I read through it, something caught my eye. The prenup had a clause about joint assets in the event of children. It stated that if either of us quit our jobs to raise our kids, we would share everything equally. I couldn't believe it. Nathan must have forgotten about this when he had me sign the Postnup. Or maybe he thought I'd forgotten. I rushed to Claire's office the next morning, my hands shaking as I handed her the document. "Do you think this could help?" I asked, barely able to contain my anxiety. Claire's eyes lit up as she read through the prenup. "This changes everything," she said, a smile spreading across her face. "We can argue that the prenup should override the Postnup, especially since you fulfilled your end of the agreement by raising the kids. This gives us a strong case to challenge his entire plan." For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of hope. Nathan had thought he could outsmart me, that he could manipulate the situation to leave me with nothing. But he hadn't counted on this. He hadn't counted on me fighting back. As the pieces of our case came together, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of anger and determination. Nathan had been so confident that he could control everything, but now the tables were starting to turn. He had underestimated me, and that was his biggest mistake. I was ready to confront him. I was ready to show him that I wasn't the helpless, naive woman he thought I was. This time, I would be the one with the upper hand, and I couldn't wait to see the look on his face when he realised it. The day I decided to confront Nathan, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. I knew that once I made my move, there would be no turning back. The old me would have hesitated, worried about keeping the peace or not upsetting him. But that woman was gone. Nathan had pushed me too far, and now it was time to show him exactly what I was capable of. I planned everything carefully, just like Nathan had planned his betrayal. First, I made sure that our kids would be out of the house, spending the weekend with their grandparents. I didn't want them to be anywhere near the explosion that was about to happen. Then, I asked Nathan to meet me at home, claiming that we needed to discuss the divorce settlement. He arrived that evening, looking as smug as ever. He probably thought I was going to beg for some scraps from the life we had built together. He had no idea what was coming. We sat down at the dining room table, the same one where we had shared countless meals as a family. Now it felt like a battlefield. "I've been thinking," I began, trying to keep my voice steady, "about how we should divide everything. It's only fair that we come to an agreement that works for both of us." Nathan leaned back in his chair, clearly pleased with himself. "Of course, I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. We can avoid making things messy." I almost laughed at the irony of his words. He really believed he had won, but I had a card up my sleeve that he never saw coming. "I had some time to go through our old documents," I said, sliding a folder across the table, "and I found something interesting, our original prenuptial agreement." Nathan's face barely twitched, but I knew him well enough to see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "What about it?" he asked, trying to sound indifferent. I opened the folder and pulled out the prenup, placing it in front of him. "This clause right here," I pointed, "states that if one of us quits our job to raise our children, all assets should be shared equally. I fulfilled that role, Nathan, and this prenup was never voided." He scanned the document quickly, his confident expression fading with each passing second. "That's irrelevant now," he said, his voice tight. "You signed the postnup. That's the most recent agreement." "True," I replied, not missing a beat. "But the postnup doesn't explicitly void the prenup, and given that I sacrificed my career based on the terms of our original agreement, we can argue that the prenup still holds weight." Nathan's eyes narrowed. He was calculating, trying to figure out his next move. "You're bluffing," he said, his tone icy. "There's no way any court would side with you on this." I leaned forward, meeting his gaze head-on. "I'm not bluffing, Nathan. I've already spoken to a lawyer. She believes we have a strong case, and even if it goes to court, do you really want to risk it? Imagine the mess, the legal fees, the publicity. Do you want that?" For a moment, Nathan was silent. I could see the gears turning in his head as he realized that he wasn't as invincible as he thought. He had spent years crafting his exit strategy, but in his arrogance, he had overlooked one crucial detail: me. "I'm not going to let you walk away with everything," I continued, my voice firm. "You're going to give me my fair share, or we'll go to court. And believe me, I'm ready for a fight." Nathan's face darkened with anger. "You've got some nerve," he spat. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me." I felt a surge of anger at his words. "What you've done for me? You mean the years of betrayal and manipulation, the lies and deceit? No, Nathan, this isn't about repayment. This is about justice. You're not going to get away with what you've done." He stood up abruptly, knocking his chair over in the process. "You're going to regret this," he hissed, his face contorted with rage. "You have no idea what you're up against." But I didn't flinch. I was done being afraid of him. "We'll see about that," I said calmly. "I'll give you a week to come up with a new proposal, one that reflects the contributions I've made to this family. If you don't, I'll see you in court." Nathan stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I sat there for a long time, letting the adrenaline slowly drain from my body. The confrontation had been intense, but I felt stronger than I had in years. I knew that Nathan wouldn't give up easily. He would try to retaliate, to find a way to regain control. But I was ready for whatever came next. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had a real chance to come out of it with my dignity and my future intact. As I sat in the quiet of the house, I allowed myself a small smile. Nathan had underestimated me, and that would be his downfall. The battle was far from over, but I wasn't the same person I was when this started. I was ready to fight for what was mine, and I wasn't going to back down. In the days following our confrontation, I braced myself for Nathan's next move. I knew him well enough to know he wouldn't just roll over and accept defeat. He was used to getting his way, and the thought of losing to me, someone he clearly thought of as weak, wouldn't sit well with him. But what I didn't expect was the silence. A week passed with no word from Nathan, no phone calls, no emails, nothing. The kids returned home, and life seemed almost normal, except for the heavy anticipation hanging in the air. I couldn't help but wonder what he was planning. Then, just as I was beginning to think he might actually be considering my demands, I got a call from Claire. "Are you sitting down?" she asked, her tone serious. My heart skipped a beat. "What is it? Did he make a move?" She sighed. "It's worse than I thought. Nathan's lawyer sent over a proposal, and it's aggressive, to say the least." I could hear the frustration in her voice as she explained. Nathan's new proposal offered me barely more than the original postnup. It was a blatant attempt to strong-arm me into submission, banking on the fact that I would be too scared or too exhausted to fight back. "He's playing hardball," Claire said. "He's betting that you'll fold under pressure. But I've seen this tactic before, and I'm not about to let him bully you into accepting this." I felt a surge of anger. Nathan was trying to break me down, to make me believe that I had no options, but he had underestimated me, again. "What are our options?" I asked, steeling myself for the fight ahead. Claire's voice softened, her tone reassuring. "We can challenge this in court, just as we planned. The prenup gives us leverage, and we can argue that Nathan acted in bad faith when he had you sign the postnup. We also have evidence that he was preparing for this divorce long before he told you, which could work in our favour. It won't be easy, but I believe we have a solid case." I knew that going to court would be messy, expensive, and emotionally draining, but I wasn't willing to back down. Not now, not after everything he had put me through. "Let's do it," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not going to let him win." The next few months were a whirlwind of legal battles. Nathan fought me every step of the way, throwing everything he had into trying to discredit me, to paint me as a greedy, vindictive ex-wife. He dragged out old arguments, tried to twist the narrative, and even attempted to use the kids as pawns in his game. But I stood my ground. With Claire by my side, I testified in court, detailing the sacrifices I had made for our family, the trust I had placed in Nathan, and the betrayal I felt when he tried to leave me with nothing. We presented the prenuptial agreement, highlighting the clause about shared assets and my role as a stay-at-home mom. We exposed his premeditated actions, his hidden assets, and the blatant manipulation he had used to trap me in the postnup. Nathan's lawyer was ruthless, but he couldn't hide the truth. The judge saw through the charade, recognizing the imbalance of power and the unfairness of the postnup. It was a long, grueling process, but in the end, the judge ruled in my favor. The court declared the postnuptial agreement invalid, citing the original prenup as the controlling document. The assets were to be divided equally, and I was awarded not only half of everything, but also substantial alimony to support the transition back into the workforce. It wasn't just a victory, it was justice. When the final ruling came, Nathan was furious. He couldn't believe he had lost. He stormed out of the courtroom, leaving me standing there with a mix of relief and disbelief. It was over. I had won. But more than the financial victory, I had won back something far more valuable: my self-respect, my independence, and my sense of worth. Nathan had tried to take everything from me, but in the end, he had only made me stronger. As I walked out of the courtroom, Claire by my side, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had been through hell, but I had come out the other side. I was no longer the woman who had blindly trusted Nathan, who had put her dreams on hold for the sake of someone else's ambitions. I was my own person again, ready to rebuild my life on my terms. A few days after the ruling, Nathan sent a brief, bitter email, blaming me for everything that had gone wrong in his life. He didn't apologize. He didn't show any remorse. But I didn't need his apology. I didn't need his approval. I had my own peace. I took a deep breath, deleted the email, and smiled. It was time to start a new chapter, one where I was in control of my own destiny. To everyone who's been following this journey, thank you for your support and encouragement. I couldn't have made it through without knowing that others believed in me. Now it's time for me to look forward, to focus on my kids, my future, and finally, my happiness. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the story and how you might have handled things differently. Do you think Nathan will ever regret what he did, or is he just too far gone? Let me know in the comments. Thank you again, and remember, no matter how dark things get, there's always a way out. You just have to find the strength to fight for it.